What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Binge Empire and our coverage of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. So this is episode 6, The Morrow. My name is Kyle. I am joined here by my good friend of many, many years. Decade? Is it 2 decades at this point? Probably. It's flirting with it.
We're
If it
flirting
ain't, it's
with it,
flirting with
yeah.
it. Yeah, if it ain't, it's
Yeah.
flirting with it. And we're here to talk about Game of Thrones, man. We love this stuff. We love this show. We love everything in this universe. Sad that this will be the finale episode. But we will be back, us two, we'll be back in the summer here on Binge Empire, covering House of the Dragon. So we won't be going too long from the Game of Thrones universe, but I am pumped to talk about this. I'm not sure if there's anything you want to talk about before we get into the episode itself. We can talk a little bit about how we'll cover it, but if there's anything you want to throw out here at the top.
I'll just put it out there that, it was kind of expected that this wasn't going to be as good as episodes 4 and 5, and that probably came true. But this was a really good send off for the first premiere season of what I'm expecting to be a 4, 5, 6, if we're lucky, 7 season show of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. This was so fun. It seemed like the internet loved this. Everybody in my life that's watching this loved this. All of our nerd friends love this show. I have yet to find somebody that doesn't like it, and I think that holds true. It's sitting right now at 8.6 on IMDb. Not sure if that's settled yet because it's been less than 24 hours since it came out, but definitely a little bit of a step down from 4 and 5, and that's going to be natural because you have to set up sort of a transitionary phase to get us into the next story that they're going to be covering. And the good news is they're already working on all of the shoots and the filming of it all, so it should be on track to be out next year. But don't let that stop you from the hype of House of the Dragon. I'm so excited to be back in this world, and this jump started me, and I'm ready for more Game of Thrones content.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I could have enjoyed it much more than I did. I mean, it literally made me reread these 3 novellas. I just finished the 4th book, A Feast for Crows, today in my main series reread as well.
Nice.
So I've just been full dove into the Song of Ice and Fire universe, and it has been an absolute blast. And I'm sure we're going to have fun here in the next hour or so as we talk about this episode, just as like a little heads up of how we do things here. If you are potentially joining us for the first time, maybe even the second time and you forgot. So we're just going to talk about the episode. We'll go through the scenes kind of chronologically. We will bucket a lot of them together as long as it kind of can create one singular conversation. We'll talk about some things we liked. I will maybe sweep up at the end of the conversation some lore things that are relevant, whether it was mentioned here or it's just something from Game of Thrones, the main series of the books that relate to what's happening in the scene. So we'll get a little bit of episode commentary, and I'll try to provide as much lore stuff as I possibly can as we get through all of it. So we will open up with, obviously, the same scene that the episode opens up with, which is Lionel Baratheon, the boss, the legend, the Laughing Storm. He comes to visit Dunk at the Elm Tree. Dunk is in a horrific state. He's in a horrific state this entire episode, and they have just a very interesting conversation here.
Just another opportunity for Lionel Baratheon to shine as one of the best characters that this season introduced. He was funny, he was sincere and genuine with his relationship that he built with Dunk. They became good friends. Like, he fought to the death for him, and he even goes on to invite him to come to Storm's End with him, and like all of these good things. But because it's happening so early in the episode, and I sort of, just as you do, like, have a vibe of what this is going to be like, it could never be as clean as him just accepting to go to Storm's End. As much as I would have loved the whole short story season 2 taking place there, I knew that would be too good to be true. So just let the boys talk and get their fun in here. And it was a good couple of scenes. And then I mean, I guess it's safe to assume that Maester is as dog shit as Lionel believes, because I don't think Dunk's injuries actually mattered. And I was a little concerned for him at first, but then I trusted Lionel as the process went on, because he did not seem to be hurting.
Yeah, that's the one thing of this whole episode that was like, okay, like, you made him he was a pincushion Dunk last episode. And then he's obviously struggling. His eye looks horrible.
Yeah.
He's limping. Yeah. He's got the bandaged up hand, but it's just like, it feels like maybe he wouldn't be moving around. You know, Arian's been in bed, it seems like, the whole time, and Dunk's just like waddling around town, which just kind of made me laugh. But I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on, because I was surprised by this, because this is not something that happens in the books, of when Lionel kind of talking shit on Baelor a little bit here. I mean, he has a point too, in a way. I think it's kind of hard to hear it because we like Baelor so much. We didn't really see any negatives to him, but Lionel kind of says here, like, he literally risked nothing. You know what I mean? 3 of the opponents on the other side were Kingsguard members, which are literally sworn not to touch him, his brother, and his 2 nephews. Stefan Fossway was the only person that wasn't at some way, directly aligned with the Targaryens, House Targaryen. So, I mean, it was a PR stunt for him, and I don't care that he's dead, basically.
I think I brought it up last episode. Like, he acknowledged his own plot armor that he had
Mhm.
from the story, which is ironic because of course he ends up dying despite the plot armor. But Lionel correctly characterizes everything that was going on there. So I was okay with that outburst. It was a little aggressive, but he's right. He's like, the gods don't appreciate this type of fear, or whatever, or this type of, what did he say? The gods.
So the gods don't favor a fraud.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I like that he leaned into that, and it did seem like he was a little bit hurt that Dunk wasn't more excited for the offer. And then there was also like the idea that he was right in front of him and he was still focusing on Baylor, who he's right. Like Baylor should not have been hurt, and it was total bad luck that it happened. So I was okay with that. It just came out of nowhere. Like he just freaked out. But Lionel is all over the place all the time. He's always erratic. He's like, "I'll love you like a brother if you come with me, or I'll hate you like a brother if you stay." Whatever. He just has all these good lines. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I just was interested in kind of seeing people's reaction to it because it seems like coming out of this, if you take Dunk and Egg out of the equation because they are the titular characters essentially, and it feels like Lionel Baratheon and Baelor were easily the 1A and the 1B. Oh, Raymond Fossway's got a shot. So, but two of the three, most beloved quote unquote side characters, and they're kind of directly at odds here. I was just interested to see kind of what people's reaction would be to Lionel just kind of speaking so ill of the dead in this moment. Another interesting thing he says is that he says there's a war coming. We could be a force, you and I have no idea what he's talking about.
Okay, because I have that exact quote written down too, and I was going to ask you, if you don't even know what the next war is, that's more concerning. I was going to be playing the part of saying like what would lead him to believe that there was a war coming. So there's not even like the next big battle isn't happening anytime soon. Is there
I
like a
just can't.
great
I mean, I
rebellion or
could see
something?
maybe what he's saying. They put down the Blackfire Rebellion,
Yeah.
whatever, how many years ago, 13, 12, and maybe Lionel's, got a better pulse on like what people actually feel about that. And maybe it's, it kind of ended, but is it actually over? There's still a lot of tension and strife and, kind of hatred brewing around Westeros. The king's old.
Mm-hmm.
The heir that everyone loves just died. I mean, there's probably some instability, on the way, I guess, is kind of what he's hinting at. But in terms of like a direct conflict that Lionel Baratheon is involved in, nothing is piquing my memory for what he would be talking about.
Nothing Dorne related or Greyjoy related. There's nothing. I guess the Greyjoy thing would have happened when Theon and them was live, right? So that would have been in Game of Thrones era. Yeah, I mean, I don't know enough of the in-between histories to actually have a guess there, but I just thought that there was something. That is a weird line if it doesn't come to fruition.
Yeah, I mean, because Lionel too is pretty anti-Targaryen. We had Raymond Fossoway who has the classic, the incestuous aliens, and he gives his whole, stump speech about it. And Lionel here straight up says it, Dunk, like the only good dragon is a dead dragon, which is just wild to see. He's one of the biggest noble houses within the entirety of Westeros, and he's just so brazenly anti. It's not like he's walking around on a horse saying it at the tournament. He's saying it to Dunk in confidence, but still, I mean, he hates the Targaryens, which is, I guess that's just some insight in what the political landscape is like, which could just be, hey, man, there's a lot of people don't like these motherfuckers. There's probably something that's going to happen.
Yeah, it could just be like an unreliable narrator of him being in character, assuming that the heir died so that there could be a succession war on the horizon. And that's what he's just assuming. But yeah, it's a good point. Maybe there's somebody in the comments that can correct us or remind us of something, of a minor event that's coming that we're forgetting about. But let's take this opportunity, since there are no more scenes with Lionel Baratheon. And I want to ask you a question. This is going to be on the spot, so I know you have to take a second to think about it. But I want you to rank the 5 main Baratheons in terms of just who you like just your favorite character. Nothing more past that, but you can loop in all your book knowledge, all your show knowledge, anything. And I'm just going to list out the 5 here as the options being the 3 main brothers from Game of Thrones. So Robert Baratheon, Stannis Baratheon, Renly Baratheon. The reveal being Gendry Baratheon, and then also throw in Lionel.
Okay, so you believe the pretender Stannis Baratheon, that Joffrey, Tommen, and Myrcella are not Baratheons. They are, in fact, Lannisters.
I specifically excluded them from the list because they're freaking Lannister as hell, baby.
Yeah, it's tough. Let's say show only version. Lionel has to be number 1. I think it goes Lionel, Robert, Stannis, Gendry, Renly.
Really? Okay, we have pretty different lists here. So I'll tell my list, and then I want to ask you a question, because I go Lionel, Renly, Robert, Gendry than Stannis. And the reason that I think Robert is lower and not number 2, maybe even 1 on my list is because I'm not as connected to the books. I know if I was more in the swing of reading them, I know the lore around Robert is just so enticing when you're like diving into the actual books. And Bobby B is fantastic in the first season of Game of Thrones, but something about Renly I always enjoyed. Especially because he kind of unfairly gets murdered by Melisandre, and I always thought that he would have made a really good leader, and him marrying Marjorie was a incredible storyline. So I always, for some reason, liked Renly. And then, yeah, I don't know. Stannis never rubbed me the right way. And I think that's part of his character. Like, that's by design. He's supposed to kind of be just this hard ass that sucks and nobody wants to hang out with. And he comes across on screen. So nothing against the actor. It's just, I know there's more that he does in the books, especially with like what he's doing up north with the wildlings and everything. But he definitely falls last for me. Gendry just kind of falls into 4 because of that's where everybody else around him fell.
Yeah, it's tough. I said show only, but it's really hard not to involve the books, especially because I'm in the middle of a reread at the moment. I feel like Renly was so much cooler in the books. It felt like I like the storylines around Stannis a lot. But then Lionel has to almost be show only. That's the only real way he can compete, because if not, he's probably 5, because he's really not in the books that much. And then Bobby B is just Bobby B. So
yeah,
I like them all for the most part. But yeah, I think I still feel good with that list.
I'll also say my last piece, because Lionel's just far and away my favorite. I gravitate towards him so much in this season. He reminds me the most of Renly, or I should say, I guess Renly technically reminds me the most of him in terms of like 1-to-1 comparisons of Baratheons. But either way, it's fun to get more of the big houses when you're getting big players like this, and I feel that Lionel did more than impress.
Yeah, it's funny too, because his description in the books, he's described as like being maybe an inch shorter than Dunk. Dunk's like flirting with 7 foot, really? And I think Lionel Baratheon is like 6'10", 6'11" in the books, like supposed to just be this gigantic human being. And I think some people at the start of the season, the book, purists potentially, book readers in general, were kind of like, oh, okay, that is not how I pictured Lionel Baratheon. But he's so good and he's so entertaining and he just pops off the screen so much that you can't, even if you were so married to the vision you had from the book in your head, like he was Lionel Baratheon. Like he was just a fantastic character.
Is it too hopeful of me to pray that he's in season 2? Because I know we're bouncing around Westeros. I feel like the nature of what I assume Dunk and Egg novellas are about means that there's almost no chance that we see this guy again in a Game of Thrones setting, unless his popularity is so positive in the community that they somehow write him into like season 3.
Yeah, season 2 is probably too soon. There is for sure a very specific event in which Dunk and Egg meet back up with Lionel Baratheon in the future, but season 2, it's to the point of like, it's not in the novellas. It's something that we know happens. And like, okay, are we going to get any more novellas? Are we just going to work off the outlines for any future seasons? Are they comfortable greenlighting seasons that aren't technically based off of books, which would be seasons 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, however many they can get after that? We will see. But yeah, no promises made on if we see Lionel Baratheon again. The last kind of somewhat lore thing I have for this is because, we talked earlier in the podcast, whatever episode it was, that Brienne of Tarth is a confirmed descendant of Dunk. Lionel asks Dunk here, you ever been to Tarth? Which was definitely just like a nod to the fact that that is a thing. But some more fun connections to the Game of Thrones show specifically. So season 8, episode 2, the episode right before the Long Night, the Battle at Winterfell, is titled A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. That is the episode in which Jaime Lannister knights Brienne of Tarth. So we know that Brienne is a descendant of Dunk. Their stories kind of mirror each other pretty well. Brienne is not a knight. She never gets knighted throughout the story, but she is a truer knight than almost anyone that is knighted that she encounters, on the road throughout all of her, trials, tribulations, and all that stuff that happens to her throughout the story. So it's just like a fun little connection between the two of them there. I actually just did the chapter in A Feast for Crows where she is like on the road with just her and Podrick, and she gets her shield repainted, and she chooses Dunk's sigil because she remembers that she just saw it in the armory at Tarth. Nice. So that's pretty cool that she's like currently in the books. She's walking around with Dunk's sigil on her shield. But the reason I even mentioned Podrick there is because that's also the episode in Game of Thrones where Podrick sings the song, High in the Hall. Yeah, yep. So that song is called Jenny of Oldstones, and Jenny of Oldstones is actually Egg's future daughter-in-law. So Jenny of Oldstones marries Egg's firstborn son, whose name is Duncan. So the
Mm.
song is about her and like, a lot of tragedy that happens with her and like the family and things like that. So a lot of fun little connections there.
Nice. That was the last hope I had in Game of Thrones, landing the ship before the long night.
Yeah, we were maybe not fantastic, but we were feeling pretty good after that episode. We were looking forward to episode 3, and then
Yeah.
things happened. Okay. So next scene we have here with a wonderful transition from Lionel Baratheon when he's like, we leave after the roast, and then it's just the hard cut to Baelor's funeral pyre here. The most notable part of this is probably just the interaction that Dunk and Prince Valar have.
Mm-hmm.
Pulled straight out of the books. It was emotional. It worked for me. I'm not sure if you have any comment on like the funeral or that conversation itself.
Not really. I just love how he looks with the one little patch of the white hair. I know that's actually book accurate because I saw concept art of what he looks like, people's just fan art. He looks way cooler in the fan art for the most part, but I still buy what he has there. He definitely doesn't love Dunk, so there could be more turmoil in the future. I don't know how much he actually blames him, but he has that interesting conversation about how many fathers have died in their son's armor. You gave a great explanation of that whole scenario in the last podcast, so I'm good on this part.
Yeah, I almost thought that. I guess it didn't really need to be more explicit than that. They presented it purely from the tragedy angle more so than like someone else saying it. So I think it's smart that it came from him himself. That stuff was actually an invention for the show. So like when he asked the questions, how many fathers have died in their sons' armor? I thought that was a really impactful line. That was something that was a show creation in general, but we still get the book accurate part when he says, "Why would the gods take him and leave you?
Yeah.
Be gone with you, Sir Duncan." And it's just like, damn, brother, he's hobbling. He's got a busted eye. You don't need to fucking shank him in the heart too while he goes. But you obviously understand, this is the guy that just lost his father.
Right. Was it mostly just timing and how he was emotional in the moment, or is there actually some animosity that you think you felt on screen? I know you know more, but like, did that actor in that scene tell you that there would be hatred that would carry over?
Yeah, it's interesting because when I experienced the book, so I listened to the audiobooks for the novellas, which are actually read by Viserys, is from the main Game of Thrones series actor. He's unbelievable at narrating. He's really good at it. It definitely came off more as like spiteful, angry, and here it was just kind of like emotional, like weary, like be gone with you. It's just kind of like questioning the world and like why this has happened to him. So I kind of like that change a little bit, but it was a kind of a good precursor to, because when Dunk leaves the funeral, it's kind of him wandering, and it's like everyone's looking at him, and they're kind of looking at him all shifty, and he ends up saying to Raymond, like, literally everyone blames me for what happened, and this was just kind of the start of that. Two things maybe before we move into the actual, the Raymond conversation, which was really, really fun, is that we got a lot of white-haired people at the funeral itself. I'm not entirely sure who everyone was. I don't know if Ashford is like a day ride. I guess they didn't really tell us how many days it's been. So like maybe it was time for some of the Targaryen family to travel over there. I don't think it was the king. I think the other like older looking white haired man with the beard is supposed to be Maekar and Baelor's one of their brothers, Aerys. He's the second born son of Daeron. It seemed like his wife was there with him. Valar's wife was there. Her name is Kiera of Tyros. She's the the dark skinned woman with the purple hair, which was just cool that they did the purple hair because sometimes they kind of lean away from the wackiness of some of the stuff that happens, but it was cool to see her. There's also two other people with white hair that looked younger-ish, but I have no idea who they were. They could have been the Maekar and Baelor's like nieces and nephews from their fourth brother. They looked way too old to be them, so I'm not entirely sure. It just felt like they just kind of threw some people with white-haired wigs into the scene and was like, it's a funeral. So I don't know. I tried to look on IMDb. I didn't see any credits of anyone as anyone other than we know. So
we'll let the showrunner talk about it more. I'm sure that'll come out.
Yeah, I mean, that just kind of is what it is, but we will talk about, we'll have a lot of fun talking about this. So Raymond flags Dunk down. He sees him just waddling across the road, so just despondent. As we know, Raymond does, calls him over, brings him in for a nice bro hug, and then we learn some interesting information about what Raymond's been getting up to after the trial.
Well, besides his new marriage and potential baby, not his baby going on there, we have what you described was the really cool scene that happens before the joust, which is supposed to be the apple shield and him picking his new sigil being the green apple. They did this all perfectly. I'm sure every book eater was eating this up. They didn't have time to do it before the joust. I'm happy that they called it out here because I love the idea of his house splitting in two, and then that's what ends up being like the political landscape of the modern day Game of Thrones, like just a huge downwind cause and effect because of this. But the one thing I wasn't expecting, which was probably the coolest part about it, was that the shield itself was shaped like an apple. I didn't
Yeah.
know that that was part of it, and that was so freaking cool. Is that also book accurate? Where it's like I'm sure they probably don't describe it like that, but it was
Oh.
awesome. It had like the core. I was obsessed with the shield. I thought it looked really cool. It had like the indent. It gave it some definition there too. It was awesome.
I don't remember if it's described that way, but I wouldn't put it past George at all. You know, a lot of
Yeah.
those descriptions get very flowery, and I love that stuff too because I mean, the Targaryens have the cool armor. You know, that's all with all the dragon motifs. You know, Stefan, Raymond's asshole cousin, had really cool armor with the apple motif. So why not give our boy an apple shaped shield? Honestly, doing it after like this is feels smarter than the way it was in the books. I feel like when I read the books, and this is not uncommon, where people were like, "How did he have time to get a new shield painted?"
Yeah, you
Before
remember you bringing that up.
between him getting knighted and then riding in the trial, like where was he getting that painted? So this genuinely makes more sense that
Yeah.
it happened this way. Although I will say, I'm pretty sure he had the green shield on in the trial, which is just kind of funny to think about. But I'm really glad that they actually, gave this a little bit of a spotlight because Raymond's the man. And this is just like a really good moment for him. You know, the quote of better to be an unripe green apple than a wormy red one. And it's like, you're damn right, Raymond. Now you're a husband. You're potentially a father. We don't know if the child is yours, but you're going to be a great dad either way. So I think
I
it'll
feel
work out.
like it should be common knowledge that there's no like I mean I guess we talked about there being a mini time skip, if that is even what you can consider it. That explains this a little bit more. But Raymond could also just be very ignorant of how things work and just is like, yep, that's my baby. Like I got a boy in the way. Not that it really matters, but Rowan was a fantastic character for what little part she got. She's no Rose because, shout out to Jane Chatwin from The
Mm,
Magicians. She's got a special place in the Binge Town, in the Binge Empire hearts.
yeah.
But she was a good character. I don't have much else to say. I know you loved her part in the actual joust itself, but she was, or the fight itself, but she was just a good side character too.
It's an interesting mirror too. They gave it in episode 1 of they make that the parallel between the life of being a camp follower, maybe is the politically correct term. Whore is probably what they would use in universe, and the way that they put their bodies on the line the same way that knights do, and all that stuff. And Dunk this whole season has been lying to get into the position that he wants to be in, and what's wrong with her doing the same thing?
Right.
She's now a lady. She is the wife of a lord, or potentially a lord, at least, a knight at this point. So that's a pretty big step up in the world for her. I wish her and Raymond all the best. I also like that she does the pleased to meet you, Sir Duncan, where she doesn't even give him the chance. And he's like, yeah.
Mhm.
Nice to meet you. Dunk the lung, thick as a castle wall. I loved I think I don't know the exact line that he says it to, but Raymond's like, oh, she thinks it's a boy. And then Dunk just goes, ah, like whatever, he has such like an reaction to something, and it's so funny to me. But a great end to this scene is that we have the Targaryen guards come up and they're like, yo, Sir Duncan, Maekar wants to see you. But Raymond kind of squares up to them, like he's all happy, jolly, go lucky. And then once he sees the guards, his face drops and he gets a little bit into go mode. And I just like that he kind of squares up to them and stands up for Dunk in this moment. He's still not backing down from any kind of fight to defend his friend. But
Mhm.
Dunk gladly goes with them, which gives us one of my favorite scenes of the entire show, in my opinion. We talked last episode a lot about how like I was really interested to see Maekar in this episode and how they were going to do that stuff. Maekar and Dunk just have a really, really interesting conversation about the trial, the impacts of the trial, what it all means for the future. Egg's kind of eavesdropping a little bit there,
Mhm.
but I just loved this stuff.
There's so many good things to say about this scene, and specifically Makar as a character. Like he really left his mark after this episode. Sam Spruill, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, did a fantastic job. Like I almost, in hindsight, like him better more in the earlier episodes because of his acting in this episode, specifically with the egg scene, the wordless scene that they have a little bit later. But in this one, they go through a lot of the checklist of questions that we had on the podcast last episode. Like I even brought up the idea, oh, so like the anvil killed the hammer. And he says that here. He's like, people are going to whisper that. And you could tell how much it hurts him because it was an accident. But the surprising part about that interaction was I thought Dunk was going to let him off the hook. He does a little bit because he says Baylor died for him, but he does say like, yeah, you swung the mace. So like he isn't actually being the relief to Makar, but he is taking it a little bit off his shoulders, saying we both caused this to happen. Because Duncan, in his own right, is very sad that Baylor died because he respected him and knew that he was a great Targaryen. So it's almost like a weird grieving scene of them talking this out a little bit before it turns over to the egg conversation. But even that, like Makar takes everything on the chin, and then he is very like professional and he is genuine in his care for his son Egg. So that whole part of the second half of this whole conversation is like, all right, I'll do this for you because my son like respects you. Like I'll invite you to stay at Summer Hall. You can train him to be a squire and I'll teach you how to be a real knight because I wink, wink. No, you didn't really learn all the right things, especially after seeing you fight out there. I don't know. Maybe he just like picked up on the jousting and like his lack of
Lionel
name
said the
and
same
stuff.
thing.
Yeah, exactly. So it was just like you said, a really, really good scene. It was sad that Egg overheard it, but it ends up resulting in what we want as fans later down the line in this episode. But overall, fantastic. I guess my question, just to kick it back to you, is Summer Hall. Remind me geographically where that is, and is this just where he sits?
Yeah, so Summer Hall is in the Reach. So for anyone that's not familiar, that's kind of where the Tyrells are. So it's south of King's Landing. It's kind of like maybe towards the border of like where like the influence of like the Crown lands, the Reach, and the Stormlands. So the Stormlands are where Storm's End and like House Baratheon rules. Kind of
Mm-hmm.
at the confluence of all those three areas. It's just kind of what you could say like a summer, like a vacation palace for House Targaryen. That's just where Maekar, he's the fourth son. He just doesn't really need to be in King's Landing if he doesn't really actually have like a job on the small council or anything like that. So he just kind of kicks it at Summer Hall.
Okay, I don't
And that's
remember
kind of where they all grew up.
anything relevant happening there. I don't even know if it had a spot in Game of Thrones Risk. Did it?
Summer Hall would not, no. So Summer Hall is not around in Game of Thrones,
Okay.
the TV show, anymore.
Is that
That's
a hint to a future season potentially?
potentially all I can say about that.
Okay.
Although, actually, directly related to that, and I won't go into any more specifics than what I'll say because I'm of a mind where I'd rather not spoil it for people on the podcast and just give you the tools to maybe look it up yourselves. But Maekar and Dunk have so downwind from they're talking, I swung the mace, or you swung the mace rather. People will whisper out this. I love the part when Maekar is basically like the king's old when he dies. Every time a battle's lost, every time crop fails, the fools of the realm will say Baelor wouldn't have let that happen.
Right.
But the hedge knight killed him, But Dunk has the next part of it when he says, I kind of sit under the tree and think, could I not have spared a foot? Could I not have spared a hand? Like that is kind of what was on the line, essentially, if he didn't do the trial of 7. And he specifically says, how can a foot be worth a prince's life? But mightn't it be that some morrow will come when I'll have need of that foot, when the realm will need that foot even more than a prince's life?
Mm-hmm.
There are theories out there about kind of what Dunk is able to do in the future, specifically around Rhaegar Targaryen and like saving him and ensuring that he's like able to be born, which for people that ascribe to the theory that Jon Snow is actually Jon Targaryen or Aegon Targaryen, that and maybe the prince that was promised, and that like Dunk's actions, since he still has that foot, are able to then save the prince that was promised, which then is what saves the entire realm in the future. There's something there potentially.
You're right to call out that was such an amazing piece of dialogue. How Dunk is almost laying out a prophecy or a foreshadowing of like needing that, and that's just how Game of Thrones operates. And when it's at its best, it's laying out lines like that. Unfortunately, we do know the truth of like what happens with the show, but I'm sure the book will have a payoff for that in a way better way than what D&D gave us.
You mean that Jon Snow is Targaryen payoff?
Yeah, all that, yeah.
Big set.
Yeah.
Okay,
okay. The other two things I had written down for this was just, I didn't even say the piece that Maekar brings up about Arion being sent over to the Free Cities, which just means Ethos, right? It just means, well, I guess not all of Ethos. It just means the coast of Ethos, right? Which Free Cities is Essos. Sorry, Essos. Is it just, is there a list of them? I know like Bravos would be one, like, or like, do you have to, should we not even go down that? You don't know that off the top of your head?
No, I mean, you put me on the test here. There's 9. I think. Could I name all of them on the top of my head? I would be doubtful, but like Pentos, Lys, Volantis, Mir, they're just kind of all like on around the coast on the other side of the Narrow Sea. Yep. They're really not that far away from Westeros or King's Landing. I mean, would it be more than half a day on a ship? I doubt it. So he does end up going to Lys. I don't know why I'm now questioning the exact way to pronounce it, but that is kind of where he ends up. So he just goes to one of the, the Free Cities on the other side of the Narrow Sea. And that's where he kind of lives out his exile.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. And there's a theory here. So we also talked when we were talking about the Brienne of Tarth and Dunk thing. And then when we talked about the Blackfires, and you mentioned there's a theory out there that Varys could be a Blackfire.
Mhm.
There's also a theory out there that Aris is a bright flame. So he is a descendant of Arion, who he was just one of the bastards that he happened to sire when he was in exile over at Essos, because Varys was born in Lys. That's where Arion was. Varys' backstory is essentially that he was bought by a warlock and his manhood was sacrificed in a ritual. People have
Mhm.
always taken that to mean that he has king's blood, which would mean that he has some Targaryen blood in some way. So there is a legitimate theory out there that Varys is potentially even directly like a bastard son of Aerion Brightflame.
Those are the type of amazing theories that, well, one, sucked me into Game of Thrones back when it was in its peak, but also are probably the reasons that George can't land this ship, because there's so many of those random things out there that he probably has thoughts about, but how do you weave them all together? Like, do you really think that Varys is going to have a moment in book 7, if that ever happens, which it won't happen, where it's like, oh, like I was actually guiding the realm the entire time to get to take the Targaryens down and bring the Blackfires up? I doubt it, but it's just such a cool piece of lore that people could just headcanon, put it in the back of their head, and if it ever does happen, there were seeds there.
I've seen some discussion that if we ever get the confirmation that wins and the series is just actually dead, in practical terms, it's probably dead, but it's not technically confirmed
Mm-hmm.
that it is dead, that someone will just post, like, compile all of like the leading fan theories about like every big plot point, and then just like that'll just be what it is. At the very
Yeah.
least, like we have an idea of what wins can likely be through a lot of information. So like at the very least, we might be able to get like a fan concocted wins. It'll not be nearly as good as the real book, but we
Mm-hmm.
can kind of get there. But still, like end of series stuff, like potentially this Varys, and also there's people think that Fagon, aka Young Griff, which was completely cut from the Game of Thrones TV show. So it's kind of hard to maybe summarize what that is, but people think that he like is a Blackfire. Some people think he's a Bright Flame. Some people say that he's a Brightfire, which is a combination of the two bloodlines into one. And it's just, we might not ever get the answer.
So sad.
But we'll see. But it's fun to think about. It's fun to talk about. The other lore thing I have here, which we do have an answer on, is just, so a lot of this episode is basically that Maekar is just emotionally devastated. He realizes the impact of what's happened at the trial. He knows that this is something that he can actually never get away from, no matter what happens in his life. We have Maester Aemon, who is his son. So in the main series, Maester Aemon talks a little bit about his dad at different points, but he also summarizes this emotional state that he's in, and he's talking about Maekar when he died, and he just says, I hope that he found the peace in death that he was never able to find in life. So this is just something that really just has attached itself to Maekar, and it'll never be something he can get rid of, which, I mean, is not crazy. I mean, he accidentally killed his brother in a trial of 7. That just doesn't really go away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. So I mentioned at the top of that, we had Egg is kind of eavesdropping on the conversation. That leads us into an interesting interaction between Egg and Dunk here. Basically, Egg lies about spying. Dunk apologizes for not taking Egg on as a squire, but he really just apologizes, but we're led to believe that's what it is. And then we get a crazy interesting flashback scene with Sir Arlen. I was taking this as a flashback, not like a dream. Like this actually happened.
Oh yeah, me too. I for sure thought
Okay.
this actually happened. I thought it was going to be his death scene. Maybe it was after, but like not really. I don't know what was going on there. Just another hilarious moment from Sir Arlen. He's just always comedy. But this was more about cementing home the theme and the messaging of the Penny Tree, and what that ends up leading to Dunk doing in the later part of this episode. But to turn that into Game of Thrones talk, I saw a tweet about this after I watched the episode, so I can't connect it too well. But apparently, in book 5, Jamie comes across a penny tree, like with all these, it's this. It's like the downstream effect of what's going on here, which I think is like at least cool. And I'm happy that they put that in the show. But it seems like you do remember that part.
Yeah. So Jamie Lannister, after the siege of Riverrun, he is potentially making his way back to King's Landing. I said this, I just read the end of A Feast for Crows, but I actually don't remember what his actual goal is. But he ends up staying the night at the village of Penny Tree, and he has like an internal thought about the tree. He sees the big oak tree with all of the pennies nailed to it, but he doesn't actually end up asking what it is. So it is kind of an unanswered question. In the grand scheme, it's like a smallest little world building detail, but it kind of just shows you that these guys and girls who made this series just love the universe they care about the information, the lore, and the world building and all of that stuff, because this was just such an obscure random part of the books, and then we just get this like amazing story and lesson about it intertwined with this scene where we're getting the confirmation basically that the books never gave us
Right.
this explicitly, that Dunk was never knighted.
And is this also the same scene or location that Jamie figures out or has that hint about Brienne being related to Dunk, or is that down the road? Because I feel like I remember you bringing that up at some point, saying that the reason that people even think what's the reason that they think they're related in the books? Was it Brienne that ran into something, or was it Jamie?
No, it's Brienne. So she has the
Okay,
memory of Dunk's shield and sigil from the armory at Tarth. So she doesn't think, like, fans made that theory. Brienne is not aware at all. Like,
Gotcha.
no one in universe, to my knowledge, knows anything about like a connection between Dunk and
Okay.
Brienne of Tarth. But it is very interesting that you say that, because in the books, when Jamie's in Pennytree, he runs into Brienne again, and they like set off. That's the last thing I'm pretty sure off the top of my head that Jamie and Brienne do in the books, is that they leave like together. Jamie like abandons the army.
Okay.
Is like where it kind of is left off. I was interested when I looked up Pennytree to read more into it. So Pennytree is a royal fief. So it's not actually like land that's owned by or subject to, it seems like, the Lord of Riverrun, because that's where it is. It's in the Riverlands. Someone tells Jamie that it's a royal fief. So in my opinion, it got claimed by Aegon IV, who is the king before Daeron, Daeron is the current king in the United Seven Kingdoms, Aegon the Unworthy, who sired all the bastards that created the Blackfire Rebellion. And the interesting part about this potentially is that there's 2 hills on either side of the village, and they've historically just been called the Teats, aka the Tits, and ownership of the Teats. So who owns the hills is actually a question. It seems like the crown owns the village of Pennytree, but the Teats, their ownership is disputed by 2 rival houses in the Riverlands. So this is the Blackwoods and the Brackens. So if people with really good memories from House of the Dragon will remember that in season 1, when all the suitors are coming to vie for Rhaenyra's hands and the 2 kids get in the fight to the death, the duel basically, that's House Bracken and House Blackwood. And then in season 2, I think it's episode 3, where we get that like big battle by the mill when the 2 like groups of kids are just kind of yelling at each other and trading insults, and then it just flashes to there's a bunch of people dead, like a war was fought. That's House Blackwood and House Bracken again. So they just have a history of being at each other's throats. Brynden Rivers, aka Bloodraven, is a bastard from House Blackwood. And then Bittersteel, who we haven't really talked about, who is basically Daemon Blackfire's right-hand man, he is from House Bracken. So they hate each other too. So
Such
this is
good
just
rivalries.
like, just like a big rivalry that exists within Westeros, within the Riverlands. People pretty much claim that George R. R. Martin's a fan of House Blackwood. They're like way cooler. They have the old gods, Blood Ravens from House Blackwood. Like they're just way cooler, and House Bracken just kind of sucks in our oaths. The guy who farted at the trial is from House Bracken. So people are just like, fuck House Bracken. We're
that really is incredible. That's incredible. Yeah.
The last little bit of this, which is extra funny, is that so King Aegon the Unworthy, the 4th who sired all the bastards, he was banging a Bracken. Her name was Barbara Bracken. So he was like, Barbara's Teats. That's what we're naming the hills. And then people were like, okay, it's Barbara's Teats. And then however many years later, was it a year, less than whatever, he started banging a Blackwood. So he was like, all right, never mind. They're Missy's Teats. And so now it's even disputed the name. So the Brackens call them Barbara's Teats, and the Blackwoods call them Missy's Teats. And that's just going on in the background of all the stuff that happens in the show.
Incredible.
That's world building, people. That's how you create living, breathing universes.
Mm-hmm.
You call hills Teats, and you make people fight over naming them. All right. So next scene we have here is going to be, it's kind of a combination of things, but it's basically the Humphrey Beesbury's funeral, which is where Dunk talks to Daeron, which then influences him to accept Egg's offer. But then before that, we have Egg trying to kill Arion. Jesus, where did that come from? Which I think, in my opinion, convinces Maekar to accept Dunk's offer. So we kind of have the Dunk and Daeron interaction. We have the Maekar and Egg interaction, which then culminate in the scene where Dunk and Maekar have their conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of a lot, but we'll take it as we go.
I don't have much to add about the funeral besides just it's cool that they lean into the bee motif and just put the queen in there, and that's how they do it. Whatever. That was a funny little Raymond scene. But as time goes on, I like Daeron so much. Like I just feel like the Targaryens that they introduced this season, I pretty much across the board like them all. Now that we're 6 episodes into the season, like I can't think of a single one I don't like now that Makar and Daron in my head are solidified as great. Always loved Arion. Obviously, Egg is the best, and Baelor is one of my favorites too. So it's just nothing but praise for all these Targaryens that we're getting in the show. So I just want more. I think he's always going to be one of the more interesting Targaryens as long as he's around because of his dreaming and like his ability to look into the future. And he even is genuine in this scene, and like he can tell that Dunk is a good guy. He doesn't have like the signs of madness. He has the signs of spoiled royal that drinks himself blacked out like whenever he wants, but like half the rules have that in the show anyway, so I'm not holding it against him too much. Just a fun scene. And I like everything. Yeah, like the double speak that was going on where Dunk's defending Egg, but he was actually talking about Arion. All that was good stuff. And it just ends with him, like on as good of terms as they could have been, with Daron accepting part of the blame too. So now it's almost like all the death of Baelor and all the misery that came from the trial of the Seven is split between Daron, Egg, and Makar. I feel like that is good.
Yeah, I mean, for them emotionally, and then Arian obviously has a lot of blame.
Yeah,
but
oh yeah.
Emotionally, does he feel it? I don't know. I guess he's been knocked out in the bed for so long, and Eggs, I guess, trying to get him his just desserts because he's trying to shank him with a fish knife. But I just thought that, so it's no secret that Dexter has been unbelievable as Egg in this whole season. A bunch of well-deserved praise. I thought that the acting here in the scene with his dad was so good too, just from like a body language perspective. Like he's so tense and he's walking up to the bed with the knife, and then when his dad puts his hands on his shoulders and he kind of just like melts and leans into him and he starts to cry, and it's just like you could like feel the emotional weight that like just being like held by his dad in that moment kind of had for him. I just thought that that was such a nice touch, and like I said, he's been so good as Egg. It was just like he wasn't really in this episode so much, but I just thought that was such like an impactful acting moment.
And this scene is even better on a rewatch because you already have the knowledge of the dialogue that Makar gives in the next scene, talking to Dunk when he says like, Egg, he's my last son, like knowing he's like the last hope of like a true, respectable, honorable heir to him, because you throw Daron out and you throw Arion out for what all the shitheads that they've kind of become in his eyes. Like Egg is the last real true hope for him, and you can feel that in this scene. Like he sees him coming up, he's going to stab he's going to stab his brother, and like it's just like a father-son moment between Egg and Makar that they both kind of need to take a step back, take a step back and just kind of reevaluate like what's really going on. Because what triggered Egg to even go into that room was he looked in the mirror and saw that his Targaryen white hair was coming back, and he said earlier, I don't want to be anything like my brother. So like that type of family dynamic, it sucks for the brothers, but as Makar being the dad, watching that happen and fester at such a young age is like, it's tragic. So like I love that Makar has these emotions and reasons of why he's so attached to Egg and caring for him. I think it's like fantastic. And like you just said, the body language, because the first half of that scene is silent and you just feel it, like you feel the whole entire thing. I loved everything about that. Dexter, Sol Ansel, and then Sam Spruill, just fantastic acting here.
I love, it's like, again, we're saying it's just genuine moment, and then the knock on the door and his line delivery of what is so funny in the moment. He just goes right back to that just like eternally upset, bitter personality of himself, which was just so good. And I love, again, the Duncan and Makar conversation. We do get Gwyn Ashford, who throws some love Dunk's way, much needed love Dunk's way, where she's just basically like, I don't blame you, they all suck and you were right. And Dunk's like, honestly, thank you. Really, just more. The last time they had an interaction, she left, and he probably felt bad about it. But
it's just constantly being reminded to the fans that nobody is going to be blaming Dunk for Baelor's death. Like whether it's through her, through Makar, through Daron, like they're all kind of making it so that I was scared that he was going to be charged in some way for causing the death of a Targaryen. And I feel like through all these random interactions throughout the episode, there's like no risk of him being a wanted man as he walks away from this setting.
Yeah, it's just kind of all of the fools and the lick spittles in the realm that are probably going to think that, and something that might follow him around for sure. An interesting thing with Gwyn here. So she's really not been in the show too much, and I'm going to fully admit that this is pretty much pulled off of someone else saying this on the internet. But so the Seven is the religion within Westeros. There's 7 aspects of one god. The Maid is one of them. And so someone was like, her just like embodying the Maid in this moment, just like a young girl who just tells it how it is, straight from the lips of babes or whatever they say about kids. And she's just like, I don't blame you, straight up. And it makes him feel better for sure. And it just had me thinking, because other people have talked about this analysis as well, that like throughout this story, specifically this season, Dunk has an interaction with every single one of the seven, an aspect of the god. So Gwyn being the maid in this moment, the warrior, I mean, for me, is Sir Robin Risling.
Yeah, I
He
was gonna say
literally
him.
has him in his head that the warrior is a part of him. So for
Mhm.
sure, the Smith, obviously that's Steely Pate, our
Yes,
boy,
sir.
the legend. The crone, for me, who's like the old maiden or the old woman rather that lights the way. I mean, I had the soothsayer, who gives
Mhm.
them the fortune, the Maggie, the Magi, who tells them the fortunes. I mean, he encountered the crone, you could say, in that way. The mother, I can totally just assign that to Dunk dying in the trial and then basically being revived. He was dead for a second there, just like Sir Arlen was dead on the tree for however long he was. The father, I have that as Sir Arlen. I mean, he's just kind of watching over him. The get up, all of that, the inspiration from the example. He's the reason why he is a knight. And then the stranger, who is usually representing death. I mean, that's just kind of Baylor's death and all of that stuff that's just kind of hanging over him. So I think it's different in the books. He actually has like an interaction with characters that are like very, or maybe not very, but more explicitly coded to be gods, or the aspects of the seven. I just thought that the show maybe has done it in a different way. It's just kind of interesting to think about. But getting into the actual conversation itself, Dunk's pitch, which was influenced by Darren at the funeral, where Darren's of a mind of it is nurture more than it's nature for the outcome of a child. And then, so Dunk's basically saying, I'll take Egg to Squire, but it's not going to be at Summer Hall, baby. We're hitting the road. We're sleeping in ditches. We're eating hard salt beef. Maybe we'll have a nice bed or a roof over our heads every now and again, but this is just kind of the way. This is just the only way, really, to get him to be, I guess, normal.
And they're both making great points. Like I see make our side. Like he's like, you're not taking him from his family. He needs to be safe. He needs to be where we can watch him grow and make sure that he's okay. But then everything that Dunk says as a retort is perfectly well reasoned, saying Daron never slept in a ditch. All the beef that Arion ever ate was thick and rare and bloody. Like that's just great points. Like the whole idea that this is your last son and your last chance. Like you have to do something different than what you did for your last two sons, because clearly they're not the best representation of honor at the moment. So Egg still has a chance. And yeah, this is a good plea by Dunk. Of course, it doesn't work, or at least Dunk eventually thinks it does work because Egg lies and everything. But yeah, like just a good conversation to get them off on like a parting shot, I should say.
That's interesting. I think we could just talk about all of this right now, like
Yeah,
the end of
sure.
the episode and
Hmm.
and the departure and all of that, because on the initial view, I totally agree that it seemed like Egg lied. Makar in the post credit scene seemed genuinely like, where the fuck is he?
Hmm.
We've lost him. And I saw on the internet someone mentioned that Makar is not wearing his signet pinky ring in the final scene. And so potentially spoilers here for the book series. Not huge ones, but in the books, it's totally implied that Makar approved of this and like gave Egg the instructions, like go on, serve him, listen to him, learn all the stuff, whatever. And like absolutely don't let anyone find out who you are. He gives him his ring to be like, this is like break glass in case of emergency. Like you're learning out in the Seven Kingdoms, whatever. But like if it's life and death, like you can reveal your identity so you can be saved, basically.
Okay.
So he has his permission in the books. And people are upset about this on the internet because they think it kind of goes against a lot of Makar's character. Also, Egg lying is like, well, he learned nothing from this season. And Egg continues to lie. So that's fine with me. But with the nugget about the ring not being in the last scene, feels like we've just kind of like we're being duped in a way of where like the most obvious interpretation is what they want us to think and we're being upset about it, but it's actually not that. And I think with that knowledge in my brain and I rewatched the episode, I'm fully convinced that Makar gave him permission and that it is like exactly the way that it happens in the books. I really think that the scene with Egg and Makar alone, and like this is the result of him being with family. Obviously Arion's getting sent into exile, but like this is the version of Egg that he currently is after living his whole life with his family. He's done nothing but try to reject it. He's trying to kill his brother in his bed. And I really think that him saying he's my last son, first time around, it was like, no, he's all I have. But I really think rewatching it, it was him like imparting to Dunk like how important Egg is to him. Of like, this
Hmm.
is how much responsibility I'm giving to you. I'm trusting you with my last son. Because I really think he took the notion to heart of like, hey, your other sons have lived this princely, pampered life, and there's a reason why they are this way. And that's basically what Daron said to him.
Hmm.
And I really think Makar took that to heart. And what Dunk was saying was like, fuck it, I'll try it at this point because it's kind of too far gone with these other ones.
That's so tough because it makes more sense for their character arcs and the meaning of the dialogue and how important that was for Makar to have given his blessing. I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good for the book readers because it stays true to what actually happened. And I'm sure if that ring is a plot point in a future story, that doesn't feel like something that they can skip. So for all those reasons, I'm hoping that you're right. But like how consistently 100% of the time is Makor in a scene wearing that pinky ring? Maybe it is 100%. Like I don't know, but if that could also just be like a like we're bringing up all these random details and these Easter eggs and lore
Mm-hmm.
hints. I feel like they can't forget that, but at the same time, if they don't ever bring it up, I don't know how annoyed I'm going to be because now I'm pretty split. Like I kind of want it to be your way, but I didn't see it that way. Even after watching it twice, like I still felt like, what's the point of Makar putting on that show in the post credit scene? That felt too much of like a stamp on the season of like, oh, Egg's back at it again. But like I could see it both ways. Is kind of what I'm getting at, and I don't know which way they were going for. Maybe there'll be more behind the scenes conversations about that.
So to speak on him acting in the post credit scene, I think there is a benefit for him putting on the show of I've lost my son
Sure.
again, versus it being, oh, it's confirmed that Prince Aegon is traveling with the Hedge Knight from the Ashford tourney. So like it's
Mm-hmm.
it's helping him have
It
a
would be
cover.
dangerous for him. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, in a way. So it is like protecting in that way. And Makar doesn't really care about, I guess, quote unquote, make himself seem like a fool because he knows in his heart of hearts that he's off with Dunk and learning kind of about the world. I'm I'm fully convinced that Makar gave his blessing. A lot of people were rationalizing it if it is a change of like, okay, it's just giving us the potential for Makar to be in the story more because eventually, Egg will probably get the ring and we'll have maybe like an interaction and things like that. Makar's actor pretty much confirmed he's not in season 2,
Hmm.
which again could be, is it copium on my end? It just leads me to believe that this has all been done on purpose and that we as viewers, along with the realm, have been goofed in that Egg has run away. And that's kind of the best thing for him and his protection in the long run.
I need a scene or a conversation in the future in season 2 for me to fully jump on to the idea that Makar believes that. Because how else would they get that across without being explicit about it? Just it's not going to be something that's looming in the background that's like maybe this happened, maybe it didn't. It doesn't actually matter until we meet Makar again. I think that I just can't envision a way that Dunk and Egg talk about it because the whole idea is why would Egg lie now and then tell him in the next scene of season 2. So I don't know how they would reveal that to us that he was faking it.
Who was faking it?
Makar.
Makar. Yeah, I mean that's fair. I mean, I guess it's not totally out of the realm of possibility that Egg stole the ring, too. As
That's
like,
very
hey,
true. Yeah,
I'll have
yeah.
this as some backup. I'm lying. I might as well add a little bit of petty thievery rather to it. So that's technically an angle. I just think I like the way I'm thinking.
I
So
want you to be right, so don't get me wrong.
yeah.
Like I hope that it somehow gets revealed that that
Well,
is what happened.
it's also interesting kind of because in the books, we only ever get things from Dunk's perspective. So if Egg is lying about something and Dunk believes him, then we as the reader, unless there are very specific context clues, are also probably going to believe the lie.
Mm-hmm.
Because if there's nothing that Egg is, or rather Dunk is picking up on, whether it's speech, whether it's body language, it's difficult for us to pick up on it too. So I guess it's technically possible, although I feel like there's in the end of the 3rd book, there's somewhat of a confirmation that Makar has given it his blessing, that this is kind of what's going on. So we'll just have to see. I mean, maybe something for us to just go back and forth for on the internet, generate
Mm-hmm.
conversation for the next 365 days until season 2 drops, and we'll kind of see where it's at.
And my last piece on that is I did see a funny tweet that is a perfect parallel if you're wrong, which is that Egg basically pulled the exact plot that Toph did in Avatar, where
Mm.
Aang's trying to bring Toph to be his teacher, but then Toph's parents say no, and then they're leaving, and Toph's like, "Oh, good news! Like they changed their mind. I can come with you." And then they bounce, and you find out that the parents were pissed. That's pretty much what we were shown here.
Yeah.
But if there is some manipulation going on, I could be happier in the long run once that gets revealed to me. But right now, I'm kind of 50-50 because if I saw that tweet, that means that some random people that are audience members are thinking that it was read the way I took it, which is probably
I think most people are.
yeah, most people are. But I like I said, I prefer your answer, especially if it's more correct and or I should say if it's pulling more directly from the source material.
Yeah, I think it's not totally out of the realm of possibility that they gave us this as like another ambiguous thing to think about, because they gave us the confirmation about Dunk's knighthood that we never, the explicit confirmation that we never really got in the books itself. There's a lot of evidence, and it's been really interesting posting like clips of the podcast on the internet and seeing how many people are in the comment sections of things being like, he was knighted. No, there's no way he was knighted. It's so obvious he was knighted. So obvious that he wasn't knighted. You know, there's so much conversation generated about it. And I was like almost open mouth shocked when he said that line where it basically confirmed it, where it was like, why didn't you ever knight me? And it was like, damn, they just kind of came out and said it. So all of the people that were talking shit on us can apologize in the comment sections. I'll go back to the videos and check to make sure they're there. But the one thing I'm pissed they didn't talk about in this episode was the fact that Valar is the heir now, not the king's second oldest, now oldest surviving son. We talked in the Discord about why that is. People can look up spoilers if they like, but I was salty that they didn't confirm it in this episode because, again, posted a clip about that on the internet and people were like, no, you're an idiot. Like, it's obviously not Valar. And it's like, we're arguing about a fact here, people. You can go check it out. Go look it up.
It's a fact, right?
Look it up. All right.
Yeah, we got to do the last Raymond scene, right?
Yeah, I was going to say Raymond is kind of the last scene that happens here in terms of our conversation. I mean, it's a nice scene. It's sweet. It's just another way to show us that you know, Raymond's a boss. He's a bro. And now, you know, Dunk then kind of gives him the horse back and stuff. The biggest thing here is that we got a lot of Raymond in this episode. And they're not complaining about that. But we got more Raymond than we got Egg, it feels like, in this episode. He was just in a ton of scenes.
Well, it's just because we're never, I mean, I can't say never, but I doubt we'll get Raymond again. Maybe ever. So Dunk or Egg will be around for the long haul. So I like the send off because I feel like they knew they caught lightning in a bottle with him as a character. Like the internet loves him. We love him. Yeah. Just give him his second scene. I didn't expect it, but it was nice that he gave him Sweetfoot too. I would have been pissed if they didn't bring up the horse because that needed to be addressed because that was something that was always in the back of my mind. Happy that it ended with them being as good of boys as you could possibly be after a weekend jousting and killing together. Like it's just awesome. They're boys for life.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say. If you didn't end it with that, they're just obviously bros for life at this point. And hey, why not? If you're a hedge knight, let's make a detour, get some cider, go see Sweetfoot again. The last kind of thing I have here is Egg. Again, something I was just like mouth open at that they did it when Egg says, well, actually, there's 9 kingdoms. It's not the 7 kingdoms, sir. And Duck's like, you're an idiot. Like, what are you talking about? But it's just like such a funny discussion point that's out there in the internet of like, they talk about the 7 kingdoms, but it's pretty explicitly at this point in Game of Thrones, like it's 9 kingdoms and like, what's up with that? So it was just so funny that they had Egg be a little nerd about that.
I don't know if I would have been able to name all 9 off the top of my head, just when he went down and listed them all. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense, especially thinking about it from like Risk, because we play Game of Thrones Risk all the time and like how they have it all split up. It's not even, I don't think it's the 7 regions, is it? Because if it is, they mix a couple of them going like whatever it ends up being, because I can't think off the top of my head if there's 7 or 9 now that we're at this point.
We're talking about it.
Yeah. Let me count
The Iron Islands are right. Yeah. I think it's 9. I'm pretty sure
it might be
in Game of Thrones Risk. It definitely is.
Let me see.
The only thing I could possibly think of would be the Riverlands getting absorbed by one of them.
No, the Riverlands are definitely one. So what do we got? We got the North, the Vale of Arryn, the Riverlands, the Stormlands, the Crownlands, Dorne, the Reach, Iron Island. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, it is 9. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is 9. So at least the Game of Thrones board game is right there with Egg.
Yeah. And the question for a lot of people is probably, why is that? So the answer to that is basically when Aegon the Conqueror conquered Westeros, there were only 7 kingdoms. So he was like, I'm taking the name 7 kingdoms. And then it just kind of stuck. They just didn't bother to adjust after that. Because when he comes to Westeros and he's like, I'm going to take over. So we have King Torrhen Stark, who's the king in the north, the king who knelt. We've got King Ronald Arryn, king of Mountain and Vale. We've got King Harren Hor. I might have pronounced that wrong as I said it out loud, but was king of the Isles and the Rivers. So that's one kingdom that gets split, basically. So that gets split into the Riverlands, which are granted to House Tully. Then the Iron Islands are granted to House Greyjoy. That guy's actually who built Harrenhal as well. We had a Lannister king of the Rock. We had a Gardener king of the Reach. We had King Argilac Durrandon, who was the Storm King. His name was Argilac the Arrogant. He was slain by Orys Baratheon, who was rumored to be Aegon the Conqueror's bastard brother.
That's
who created House Baratheon. So there's maybe a little dragon blood within House Baratheon. Bobby B, Stannis, and Renly's grandmother was actually a Targaryen. So there's definitely some dragon blood floating around in House Baratheon. And then there was just Dorne.
Dorne was the other one. Okay.
Yes. So we basically split one of the kingdoms into the Riverlands and the Tully. I'm sorry, the Riverlands and the Iron Islands. And then the Crownlands just over time kind of become their own sphere of influence. All right. And then the episode played us out with a song with lyrics that was like a real world song, which was interesting. Not something that I anticipated. It's a song called 16 Tons by Tennessee Ernie Ford. And it's just about the struggle of the working class, what it's like to actually earn a living, working in wage labor, day in, day out, working for the man. And at some level, that's what Egg's kind of learning about as he sets off on this journey with Dunk. So it seems pretty apt.
Dunk left his penny, which was like a direct parallel to the flashback earlier. And then did you catch that funny comment from Egg about Dorne with the puppet shows saying, like, I heard they have pretty good puppet shows. So that's just a reference to Tansel being down there, I think. So maybe that's in his future. And then they have the moment where they split off from the third night. Was that?
That was Sir Arlen.
Sir Arlen? That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
like that was just like a symbolic. Yeah.
Yeah. It would have been crazy if Wiz Khalifa started fucking rapping at the end of this episode. That would have been freaking wild.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, that's playing us out. That is A Night of the Seven Kingdoms Season 1. That's the finale. The morrow. We're sad. We're a little upset about that. But like we mentioned, we'll be back covering Game of Thrones universe in June for House of the Dragon here on Binge Empire. But Binge Empire isn't going away as a podcast. So we are currently covering Industry on HBO. We're about to start covering Paradise Season 2. That's coming out on Hulu. I think they just dropped 3 episodes to start a season. And
preparing for that. That podcast should be out over the next 2 days. Well, I guess when you hear this day.
Yeah, that works. That'll be weekly coverage after that. So that'll get you through most of March into April. And then Binge Empire is just one part of the Bingetown TV podcast network. So also The Core is our other main podcast. That's where we cover everything on Apple TV. Right now that's covering Shrinking. It is also covering Hijack, and it's about to start covering Monarch. That's also where you'll find coverage of Silo, Severance, Pluribus, and everything else that's good all over on Apple TV. So be sure to go check out The Core. And then the best way to support us always is 5-star reviews on whatever you are watching or listening on. And that's pretty much all I got. You know, at the end of these seasons, it's always nice to just shout out everyone who's been listening, who's been watching, who's been supporting, who's been commenting, all of the nice comments. We just appreciate all the support. It's just really fun to talk about the shows that we love. We obviously have these pre-recorded conversations, but then we get into actual conversations with people in comment sections, people that join the Discord. So the link to the Discord will be in the episode description, although I look at the analytics and literally no one's listening right now. But if you want to go there, be our guest and then be our friend. And that's all I got. So we're Binge Empire, and thank you so much for listening.